their PhD and then maybe a postdoc or something. Okay, very few spent time working in the professional ranks that will employ the vast majority of their graduates. Right? We are different. There's two of us spent a significant amount of time in the professional ranks. So what that allows us to do, and make no mistake, it's not like we're a vocational program, but the point is that we have maintained our connections to industry. We know what it is that is what the needs of companies that hire geologists, right? And and so I'm one of those people. I spent 16 years as a professional geologist, including running my own business for 15 years. And, so on one hand, we have that, and just to give you an idea, we have recruiters come all the time from various companies. Various companies are recruiting, asking people to contact various of us. Do you have any students that And I can't count the number of people that said, "Hey, when we're looking for people to work for us, we don't bother going to the UCs or anything like that because their students are not prepared." Right? But we'll go to you, we'll go to Stanislaus, we'll go to Sacramento, or something like that. But and then we've established an outstanding track record in terms of our graduates and how successful they've been professionally. So we've got a great alumni too, and so that also is really helpful for us in terms of helping our students connect with employers, not just in the Fresno area, but we got beachheads in the Sacramento area, the Bay Area, Southern California, and we're pretty well set up that way. But the flip side of that is, again, for those that want to go on to graduate study and the like, a number of our students have gone on to graduate school and have been very successful. And this is because the other side of the coin for us is that we have some outstanding researchers in our faculty, and we have a very active student research program on the undergraduate, and we also offer masters. And I think in undergraduate research, we are one of the top programs. We were very active. And so, there's various scientific meetings, right? National, regional, international, that people present their research at. And we regularly are kind of disproportionately represented by our students who are presenting their research at these meetings. Yeah, the crew of our students that go to these meetings is just out of proportion to our size as a department. So, but speaking of our size, and that's another thing. Whereas, of course, administrators might give us a hard time that your classes are smaller, enrollments are coming down right now. Hey, that's good for you guys, right? Because small classes. I mean, you talk about a great, teacher to student ratio. Well, you've got that. And even when we've been a little bit bigger, because post-COVID and stuff, we're down a little bit. The one thing about us, because we're small, the student, our department community is just that. It's like an extended family. So once you become a student, right, with us, everybody knows you on a first name basis. I mean, that, not just your classmates, but you're talking about, your instructors, right? And, just to give you an idea how we roll, right? dude, look, loosey goosey stuff. Look at the name tag that people put on this box of swag to bring here. You know, it's like folks call me Wako, right? The students call me Wako, right? Dr. Wakabayashi or something like that. Yeah, that's how we roll. I also think that you know, we have a nicely integrated program we have good laboratory and you know, classroom activities, research and whatnot. But we sure as heck take advantage of the fact that we're ideally located to get you folks out to see the world-class geology and I mean, it is world-class within spitting distance of this. I mean, just give you an idea, right? If world-class is a term that gets thrown around a little bit too lightly. But when I mean world-class, I'm talking about examples that people around the world call out as the type, you know. And so it's not just that if you do research and you look at these things, you're looking at something of interest to us locally or regionally, but you know, these are focal points of research globally. So you look at that pink, right? Those are the granitic rocks of the Sierra Nevada batholith. This is one of the most famous and well-studied batholiths in the world, and a continuing focal point of teaching and research in our department. We have several folks working on research projects in there, because guess what? This is like the roots, right, of a once huge magmatic arc. Similar to, this is like if we unroofed the Cascades and looked at their plumbing system, right, that has crystallized. And what it tells us is all the studies going on here, there's still some big time questions that are being asked. Like, for example, there's you know, a lot of pros and cons of how do we generate granitic rocks, okay? And you know, Keith Paterka in our department is one of those carrying on an active student research program with both undergraduate and master's students that looks at that. And at the root of this, this is how continental crust gets produced, right? So it's like a laboratory in terms of how does continental crust get produced, right? Okay, and so then we look over here, we see these guys. Well, these are the strands of the San Andreas fault system. It is the most studied and famous strike slip fault system on Earth. Right? Let's go back to the Sierra Nevada, the mountain range itself, right? The study of how did that topography, how were the canyons formed, but how is that, you know, what is the history of uplift and when did it become a mountain range? Hugely controversial. Right? I'm by the way, part of one of the member news is represented by me. Right? But the point is that globally, when people look at geomorphology, right, the evolution of the landscape, right, this has been one of the world's premier laboratories where breakthroughs in knowledge and geomorphology have taken place, among which are, some of you may have heard of the critical zone, right? The critical zone is the surface of the Earth, right? It's the juncture of the atmosphere, the biosphere, and the Earth. And so in that upper few meters, right, we got all this interaction between the life system, the Earth, the atmosphere. So many things are modulated by that, you know, whether it's the climate, whether it's what can grow, right? And what is controlling what is weathering and eroding and the like. Okay? And so the very establishment of this sort of science began in the Sierra Nevada, and it continues to this day. So, so we have that. Oh yeah, and then there's, you see some of these greens and purples and stuff. Well, before we became a transformed plate margin here, right? There was eastward dipping subduction, right? And along the subduction interface, right? Okay, most stuff just subducts, right? But every now and then, you know, through time, right? That fault slices in to the subducting plate. And when it does, it rescues some of that from going down the hole, right? And then we just shingle one below another. And we call that a subduction complex. And the beauty of that is, right, we cannot directly explore the subduction interface at depths of 5 to 30 to 40 to 50 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface, right? It's below our range of drilling or anything like that. Because remember, we're not just starting on land. We have to start off in the deepest part of the ocean, right? Is where the oceanic trenches are, where we have a subduction zone. So this is our only way of getting direct insight into what is going on down there. Why is this a big deal? Think about where the great earthquakes, those devastating subduction zone earthquakes take. The patch that breaks is pretty much from the ocean floor to a depth of 40 kilometers. So when you look at those rocks, those greens, which my favorite things on Earth, is the Franciscan complex, which is where we do a lot of field trips, we teach field classes in there. You know, you're looking at the most storied subduction complex, and it's a natural laboratory for us to be able to examine what happens along the subduction interface. What's moving which way, how did things evolve through time, gives us insight into so many different things, right? So right here within spitting distance, we've got so much to offer, and you know, our department takes full advantage of that, both in our teaching and the research we involve our students. So, but you know, I think we are, you know, we've earned a reputation as being a very, very high quality program, and I think we have a nearly unique blend of cutting edge research and researchers in our department, combined with this practical grounding in relevance, right? Because, you know, at the end of the day, what this is all about is it empowers you with choice. You see what I mean? Right? Is that you have options when you know, you get a degree with us. Whichever direction you want to go, you're in good shape. You want to head off to graduate school, you've got a great foundation. You want to get a job, you got a great foundation. Speaking of them jobs, right? Right. I've been associated with that industry now for, you know, not since the dinosaurs, by the way. I'm not that old, but a long time. Okay. And I can tell you that geology enrollments and geology graduates have not kept pace with all the retirements. In other words, there is more demand in the profession than we can than nationally we can meet with graduating folks with geology. Okay? So, you know, it's one of those fields, you like geology, right? That, hey, how many, you look around the majors on a college campus, you know, how many majors can you say, not only is it fun, you know, we don't go in this for the money. I mean, hey, if you could make a great living, don't get me wrong. Okay, so you will earn a good living as a geologist, but we have more fun than almost anybody else. Because we go into this because we have a passion for it, we like it, right? So we try to fuel that for you folks with kind of our unique kind of blend of strengths. And I also think I spent a lot of time studying different departments before I came to Fresno State, and you'll look at some departments on paper and you'll say, oh yeah, this person is a really good researcher and this person's a good teacher. And yet sometimes, you look at their curriculum and they're less than the sum of their parts. And it's because of kind of their, the way their curriculum and they cross coordinate. I believe we are one of those teams, and I like to call us a team, okay? We are better than some. And part of it is because of the way we work together, not just as faculty, but working with you students too. Right? So anyway, that's my sales pitch, and I mean it.
Love it, love it.
Questions?
And you have flyers to pass out.
Yeah, so, yeah, please take some swag. We got some flyers here. And we got like keychain. Hey, as far as stress balls, we're less stressed than most people. I mean, hey, everybody gets stressed, but, no, geology, right? It's about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, earlier you mentioned that, companies would call you guys before UC.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Why? Oh, yeah, let me explain. Let me explain the difference in educational law. Okay, but, and I'm a product of the UC, but that was back in a different era. So needless to say, I got a lot of friends throughout academia, but folks I know who go through, one of my proteges was a UC Berkeley grad. And among other things, just to give you an idea, when he went out with my field class in the spring, he goes, oh, so now I'm finding out that if I had gone to Fresno State instead of Berkeley for my undergraduate, I would have actually been better prepared to do my PhD. But the reason is a difference in emphasis. And let me explain how this works. Okay. In a PhD granting school, which all the UCs are, right, as well as the Stanfords and the SCs, Caltechs and that kind of thing. Right, the faculty are hired with one big priority, is to be productive in research. Actually, it's ordered one. Okay, the first priority is to secure extramural research funding. It used to say publish or perish, but now it's get funded or lose your job. Okay. 2 is research. Teaching really does not factor in, because it is not a priority. They don't teach as much as we do either. I mean, I taught, I taught one structural geology class, and I taught kind of their equivalent ES3 at Berkeley. And I get this notice that I officially have one academic year of teaching credit at UC Berkeley. That's what their teaching load is compared to us. Okay, but the thing is that even if you have people who are committed to teaching, even though it's kind of not what they get tenured as unlike us, the curricular design is designed as if every one of their graduates will go on to a PhD program and become a faculty at a PhD granting institution, which means that their curriculum is really narrowly focused on kind of what's hip. It's usually about more modeling and coding and whatever. I'm not saying that coding is a bad thing. Don't get it wrong. And so what that means is that they either go that route, but they have no chance at getting a professional job, right? And so my friends at UC who've gone through say, yeah, well, they get jobs, but almost none of them in geology. The vast majority of them are like, computer programmers or something. So, I mean, they'll get a job that requires a college degree, but it will not be as a professional geologist because they are inadequately trained to do that. So that's the difference. This is a different curricular design. It is a different emphasis. Yeah.
This is random, but do you think AI would have a role in geology eventually?
AI is gonna have a role in everything, eventually. In everything. You just have to manage it. It's a little bit behind in geology for the same reason that, I mean, all I have to do is look at your spell checker and stuff. You know where I'm going with this, right? Because things like biology and chemistry and physics and stuff like that, they're more part of the mainstream knowledge that, right? Geology, kind of knowledge in general, what we do, what the field is all about, let alone our technical specifics, are, you know, just not as mainstream. So, so that's, yeah, that's why the AI in a lot of geology applications is going to lag behind. It's going to eventually, you know, I mean, folks are already using it for various applications, but it's going to lag a little bit behind other fields again because of you know, what amounts to global earth science ignorance, right?
Where do you recommend students look for internships?
Oh, so we have first of all, we've got kind of an internship office that helps set students up. Secondly, when it comes to like networking and things, I'm a big proponent, as you know, of some of the local professional organizations that hold meetings. Chief among which is AEG, the Association of Environmental and Engineering Geologists. And it is an absolutely terrific way to network with professionals, professional organization. And you go to one of those, it doesn't matter what level you're at as a student. I mean, you get to talk to real, and so you could directly hit people up about internships and job, you know, prospects. So for example, there's a number of places, I mean, we have the local regional water quality control board that you may know, the water board, we call it. They actually have a program where they will hire you, you know, before you graduate. They actually have their kind of their pay thing is set up on, well, how far along in your degree you are, okay? And they're flexible in terms of realizing, well, you're a student and you have to, you know. So, and there's a number of local regional opportunities like this, and they're growing. The reason why they're growing is our alumni network continues to grow, and all the folks that, so such a huge percentage of people who contact us nowadays are you know, our alumni, and it's really terrific.
So I've heard of like biological surveys, like just doing surveys for biology. Are there geology surveys like that? And what?
Yeah, so geology, there's so many things we do both in research, but let's just think about the professional ranks, right? So for example, we talk about environmental geology, and say we talk about environmental cleanup or protection of the environment. So you have to go out, you have to take soil samples, groundwater samples. There are, you know, you might want to know the subs more about, right? We only see the surface, right? We need to know what kind of the stratigraphy is beneath us. Might drill some holes, get an idea of 3D, what we're up against, as well as sampling to say, okay, we've got this contamination here, you know, how is it spreading? What, you know, what is its extent, and how can we clean it up and protect, you know, our groundwater and other resources, right, and human health. Okay, so we do a lot of that. There's we will commonly there's a lot of studies to say, examine just the physical nature of materials, say, in the foundation of what might become a building or some other engineered structure, right? Because there are certain aspects of, of that physical aspects of that material that will govern the stability, right, of the foundation of a building. We also assess, things like earthquake hazards. What's the probability that, during the design lifetime of our structure, that we're going to experience a certain level of shaking, right? Because, we want the building, the overpass, whatever, to be engineered so that we don't have a failure, right? And of course, that level of care for these hazards goes up when the consequences of failure are more grave. So, for example, we're more of what we call conservative in terms of our engineering geology assessment for something like a dam, right? Because we sure as heck don't want that failing because of the downstream consequences, right, of major dam failure. Right? So there are a number of other sorts of, and so yeah, depending on where you go, particularly here in the valley locally, a lot of it is looking at the groundwater and keeping it clean, worrying about the resource itself, being concerned about contamination of it, but which, by the way, happens not just from human pollution, but there's naturally occurring substances that can be hazardous, right? And that's another thing in which a lot of people aren't aware of this, that when we talk about you hear about metals of environmental concern that are toxic to either environmental or human health or both, right? In the majority of cases, our exceedances are coming from natural materials and not stuff we dump there. Right? And it makes a big difference if a geologist is able to assess that with the knowledge of, hey, this kind of mineral, say, is high in this element. Okay? Occurs all over the Sierra Nevada as well. That kind of thing, right? Because you could save the client, the taxpayer, whomever else, a lot of money with that. And my point is that a lot of folks think that when you take geology classes, it's only the directly applied classes such as hydrogeology and engineering geology that are relevant to being professional. But pretty much every core class you take is relevant to professional work you'll do, including things like petrology and geochemistry, which I was just talking about. So, yeah, other questions? So yes, doing surveys. So our kind of survey is different than biological survey, but it's the same sort of thing. We're getting out in the field and we are collecting samples. We are looking at kind of the 3D and spatial distribution of stuff.
In order to do those surveys, would you have to be like, what would you need to do those surveys? Because could you start out being just like an assistant or something like that?
Depends on the type. Yeah, depends on what you're doing. In a lot of cases, yeah, there's a role for people at different levels. Ultimately, though, you'll want the full geologic training because it kind of depends on the project too, right? Because ultimately, professionally, everything's about money, and you don't want to have extra folks if one person who has the knowledge can cover you, right? So.
Yeah, to answer your question a little bit more, the way that generally works is once you get a degree, you go in as a staff professional, a staff geologist, staff engineer, whatever, or staff environmental scientist, and you have either professional geologist or professional engineer that oversees what you do. And in general, you do the field work and they help you write a report. And then as you get more experience, you start to move up to their level, you get your professional license, and then you then have people under you to do the field work and all of the grunt work of churning, trying to get samples out. So that's kind of how it works.
Okay.
You can be cross-trained too, so I know you're biology, but you can also do like a geology minor, so that when you get hired, you have even more of a leg up for one, hiring into your college base.
Yeah.
And on the question of minors, I'm gonna go for city and regional planning at Fresno State for next semester.
Yeah.
And I have enough credits in the plan for a minor.
Mhm.
So what is your minor program for geology?
I don't know the specific number of courses, but it's laid out on our, you know, and, you know, we're pretty flexible. So again, because we're small, right, you come to us, we're aware of the fact that, especially in our field, there's not a one set, it's not typical that everybody enters as a freshman and declare, you know, that's actually atypical. And so people are, you know, whether they're minoring or whether environmental science, whether in geology, they're coming in with all sorts of different pathways. So yeah, we advise them individually. We advise all of you individually, right? Because everybody's different. And because, again, there's not a gazillion students, you know, we can give you that kind of one-on-one advice. Yeah.
I know this is kind of a rare instance, but would this go into the same thing for archaeology?
Yeah, absolutely. I just get that it brings up one of our greatest success stories, right? So it is very, 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 very rare that a student comes in as a freshman, right, wanting to be a geology. So we had this one student, right, who actually studied undergraduate programs the way most students study graduate schools. And she went road tripping all up and down the, looking at various departments. But that was her end goal, is she wanted to be able to apply geology to archaeological research. And so she actually wasn't, Fresno State wasn't on her original list, but her sister was in a swim meet at Clovis West during the summer. And so they just, you know, she noticed, oh yeah, Fresno State does have a geology program. Since we're here, let's just drop by. And they, you know, I was in my office, and they, you know, she and her dad came down to my office, and, you know, we talked, and, you know, she decided to come to Fresno State, and it worked out. You know, she eventually got her, after she finished with us, she got her doctorate at UC San Diego, and now is working in, where is it, some kind of lab museum, where that is what she's getting to do, what she always wanted to do, is apply her research tools that she learned as a geoscientist to archaeology. So it's not rare. No, it's, there's a very close connection, right? Because we're looking at, you know, older things, and a lot of aspects of geology bear on, you know, one of the big questions is age, right, of archaeological artifacts, but there's other things too, right? We can study that, okay, we have these kinds of artifacts, where could they have come from? You know, what does this tell us about trade routes and things like that? Well, certain geological aspects of that can give you insight into, oh, this kind of stone, right, that's been used decoratively or, you know, as a tool, this is only derived from so and so, you know, this place, right? Because we can do that.
You have a pretty awesome paleontology.
Other questions? Yeah.
To piggyback off that, I'm open alien
Uh-huh.
knowledge, so I was like, just interested in what this about alien knowledge.
Well, there's a lot, especially in places, right? And so when we look at the valley fill, right? We you get into the horizons where they're just super rich in mammoths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and things like that. So we have a long-standing research program, including working through Fairmead landfill. But that's not the only place that, that's one of the reasons why when there's a major construction, you have to have like a paleontological assessment. Right, and there's monitoring done. Because of the fact that this region is very, very rich in, in the younger sediments in Pleistocene fossils.
Yeah, high-speed rail has done a lot of hiring people to do paleontological studies, clearing footage while they make their alignment. So, but any start anywhere really gets you the leg up if you're still in college. So like, I jumped around from a big company that used to be called URS, now called AECOM, as just somebody that helped put together reports. And I just would bind the reports for them and ship them out. And it was not super scientific. And then I made the jump to an even smaller company called Technicon Engineering and worked in a lab. So I worked in a geotechnical lab, soils tests, all the physical properties of soils. And then from there, before I even graduated, I had a job as a staff geologist there. So like getting your leg up in being an intern or being a lab, basically a lab rat for one of these engineering companies in town, really like ups your game. Because they're like, oh, they're really serious about industry. They're trying to develop skills and all that good stuff. So I recommend that. And if you're interested in a lab job, let me know. So my husband works for Salem Engineering. And they're always looking for people.
And again, we can hook you up, we have, and that's a big part of what we do.
One of our biggest selling things is basically job placement, pushing you out there, not just saying, you got your degree, bye.
Do you have any specific numbers on the number of alumni that come out of your program prior to the first 5 years of their degree? In a specific regional, like.
I know it's the majority.
Majority.
Yeah, it's the majority. I don't know the specific. I think we might have that. It's a very, very high percent. I mean, those that don't like go to graduate school or something like that, but those that make the choice to go work, just a huge proportion of majority get jobs.
Yeah, it's a great program. I went through it. John was one of my first instructors, and I went through as a bachelor and a master, so I continued into graduate school. But it was definitely like a little family. And I ended up in a really big class because things were not offered the way they were supposed to be. So we ended up with
You guys had the biggest. That's the
we had
biggest
that
class.
big combo class.
It's just the biggest class of all
It
time.
was like 30 students in this field class.
Right.
I don't know how he kept track of all of us, but yeah, no, it was definitely like a little family. You go on so many camping trips. We're about to go on one next week, and it's like take that and multiply it by 5 each semester. And so you're just constantly with everybody and forming these really close bonds. Whereas at UCs, they don't have as many field trips, and there's so many students. You're just a number there. Like the faculty don't really know who you are unless you're like 4th year or a graduate student. But the minute you step on that campus, people start knowing who you are, which is really nice.
Yeah, actually, if you're at UC, the only students they really keep track of are PhD students.
Yeah.
And everybody else is, it's.
They're not making them any money, so they're
Yeah,
like,
no, I mean, it's just there's undergraduates, it's kind of an afterthought.
it's sad.
It's really sad.
And it costs you more money. So much more money.
But as I say again, it's not just about that. It's about the
Yeah.
whole curricular design. And in most places, like my alma mater, I question if most of the faculty on in that department could tell the difference between this. I'm only half kidding. I'm actually.
Yeah, we do have, one student that went on this field trip last spring. Brian, he was at our first meeting. He went on this field trip with us. He was originally gonna transfer to UC Merced or. I don't remember where he was going, but he was transferring to a UC. Fresno State was not on his radar. He wanted to get out of town, and he went on the field trip and completely changed his mind. He met all of the faculty, some of the faculty from Fresno State. He met our tech, which is gonna be our chef. He met other geology student, graduate and undergraduate. And he was like, "This is awesome. I'm gonna transfer to Fresno State," and he did. So it's definitely like you'll get an eye opening next week, I'm sure. In addition to, but
And again, you know, like this feeling of community and family is just really cool, right? You get into classes and your cohort that you go through. I mean, you know, folks work cooperatively. It's not like a competitive thing. They're trying to stab you in the back or anything like that. No, you're all the crew, and folks help each other out. Hang out, and it's really a great group. Yeah.
Has there been any like cool breakthroughs that you know of recently in geology?
You know, it depends on one's perspective. Of course, I'm going to say yes, but I mean, to me, the biggest revolution that has happened in geology since I got my doctorate is concerning just the whole breakout of critical zone science, which began in the Sierra Nevada. And I'll just tell you what the specifics of why it was so revolutionary. It was a PhD student. Now Berkeley does have a PhD program. This is different. So he's Berkeley PhD student, and he was applying a new dating tool because it's very hard to get age dates on young things. Things like erosion rates and stuff is really difficult. So applying this technique called cosmogenic nuclide dating, beryllium-10, aluminum-26 dating. Okay? And what his target was that folks had long assumed that the biggest mediator of erosion rates and weathering rates is climate, you know, right? You know, rainfall, mean annual temperature. I think that tropical climates think really be gone, right? And so he went out to quantify that because this had just been a qualitative assessment that people had made. It had never been quantified. And the results have shaken the entire world of, you know, the entire geoscience world. And it's just rippled through, and the revolution continues. It's basically that no, climate, that signal is actually muted in terms of how strongly it modulates weather and erosion. It's actually tectonics rules. You know, it's the tectonics, it's making things go up, relative elevation changes. That's the dominant signals. And a lot of the manifestation of that, you know, what is controlling erosion rates, weathering rates, we can see world-class examples right here. In one of the places where, you know, if you look at this without that kind of perspective, it's counterintuitive. But if you've ever driven up 180 toward Kings Canyon out of Minkler, you know how you go out that first set of road cuts as the road starts to climb. Okay, it's a very steep slope. You get a ton of granitic outcrops on the slope. So you think steep slope, you got all that rock, right? You expect to see ringing hard rock then in that road cut. You do not. Stuff you could dig out with a shovel. And so you just go like, why? You look down at the bottom of the valley below you, and you find that it's filled with alluvium. That means the stream is not cutting down. And that's what's going to drive the erosion. So even though the slope is super steep, the erosion rates are low, that allows the very slow weathering rate to get ahead of it and penetrate deeply into the substrate and give it deep weathering. Okay, and again, prior to this quantification of process that has gone on in the last 2 decades, that would have been just totally counterintuitive. But it's not. So, you know, to me, I think that's the biggest thing that's happened. I mean, in various aspects of geology, there's breakthroughs all the time. In fact, one of the things I like to tell people is that geology is different than being in other sciences, because even when you're at the intro level, you're like, your toe is already getting to the cutting edge. So I can't count the number of times that I've been teaching intro, you know, ES1, and a student will ask me a question. And that question right there, because it's getting to a point where, well, we're still trying to explore that. Okay? And these are big picture things. A lot of folks, when I went through school, you know, was, you know, decade and a half after the plate tectonic revolution, right? And so that was like the big intellectual jump in the history of our science. But there's, I think, a mistaken belief that the plate tectonic revolution ended with the last of the great papers on it, maybe in 71 or 72. I think that's totally wrong. Right? And I think the plate tectonic revolution, to me, is a case of arrested development. Those of you, you know, who want to, can have the opportunity to just make a major breakthrough in plate tectonic understanding. Why? Because what happened is that following the plate tectonic revolution, we were already in a trend where like field studies and the like were sort of beginning in geology. And a lot of what I think the disconnect is a lot of our teaching, I always say, we teach plate tectonics, we preach plate tectonics, we don't practice it. There are a lot of anachronisms that are still set in like a fixist reference, and they're just totally wrong. Right? And because of that, is that there's still these anachronisms built into the way, and I'm not just talking about teaching, I'm talking about the way people do research and what they target, right? Those that grasp the mobile reference frames can make intellectual jumps on the scale of the major breakthroughs. Honestly, I'm not believing. So it's just exciting. Okay, you know, again, because this field is so close to the cutting edge from the moment you just get into geology. Of course, some of us, we, you know, I guess, you know, we think maybe some of us have made some breakthroughs, but that's not up to me to judge.
Any more questions for Dr. Wakabayashi? Well, thank you for coming and talking to us, John. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and help yourself with some swag. And by the way, again, because we're small and there's not very many of you, if anybody wants to contact me for, you know, ask me questions, just go ahead and do that. You know, just grab one of my cards for those who want to follow up. I'm gonna get some more printed. Okay. So if I've got this like,
I guess people can take a picture of it too. If you
yeah,
like.
actually you could do that too, huh? Yeah. That way you don't, that's the new school way of doing it. Yeah.
I sent this around. You can take that back to
Oh,
Laura.
oh,
If it's their
thank you
contact
very
info.
much. Yeah, yeah. And this collection is primordial. Okay, it's my business cards. Okay, cards of other professionals and academics, and then the brewmasters of several of the best breweries on planet Earth.
There you go.
Why?
I was waiting for that.
You knew that was coming.
I was waiting.
I had a long conversation, last night with, one of the greatest young, new players in the game. About, again, yes, we were talking a lot of technical talk. We were also talking kind of, state of the industry. State of craft beer business. Yeah, I'm into that too. I'm into fishing, I'm into craft beer.
What's the name of that place in Denver you took us to in 08 when I took you and one?
Well, that's the bistro.
Yeah.
It is like, we in the game, and I do consider myself, I'm not a professional, I've been doing it for 50 years, but, that's considered the cultural headquarters of kind of NorCal, craft brewery. And it's such a big deal that there's a guy, Jeremy Warren, who, knows me, in the craft beer and stuff. He's the owner of a brewery called Revision, which is a legendary place. Prior to that, he had opened up Knee Deep, you may have heard of also. And both times, even though, Knee Deep was originally open at Spark before it moved to Auburn. And then Revision is at Sparks, I kind of read it, right? Yeah. And he held his grand opening both times at the bistro. And, the second time, I was there both times, and he goes, yeah, of course I'm gonna do it here. This is headquarters. You wanna get the word out, you start here. So I'm trying to get, do that, Machine Head hooked up with, because he's got a big following. I'm trying to get him hooked up. Okay, he's gonna talk to Jeremy and collaborate, because he collabs with
Yeah, I remember that background.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned fishing. What's the best stone for using as a weight or a sinker? If you run out of lead.
Oh, I guess,
That
you
could
know,
use as a sinker.
you mean, you're talking about, you just be talking about, that'd be about density.
Okay.
So you just have to look for the thing with rock type in the area with the highest specific gravity, right? Because then
Right.
but yeah, when I go to the High Sierra to fish, and I'm all, I'm probably, this is actually, what's that?
Sissy whipping.
What's that?
So you're sissy whipping.
No, I'm a lure
You're fly
fisherman.
fishing.
No,
Fly
I'm
fishing.
a lure fisherman, so I
Like
throw,
lure.
I throw metal. And, this is probably an accurate statement. I'm pretty sure that I'm not gonna be misrepresenting myself when I say this. I have fished more lakes in the backcountry of the Sierra Nevada than any. That number is about 800, backcountry means you actually have to hike to it, about 800 different lakes in the High Sierra. I have a really long time. Doesn't mean I'm the best, but I am the most experienced.
We have ran out of sinkers, we tied stones to it.
You fit,
Run out.
this is salt water or fresh?
Freshwater.
Yeah.
Saltwater.
Saltwater's really hard because of the.
Or they
I-
pound sometimes. They
Yeah,
get
I do a
hard.
lot of salt water. Well, a lot of people do salt water because, the weight's expensive too. Is they'll have a bag. I don't know if you've seen this. And you can
Bag.
fill it up with gravel and sand
Sand, yeah.
and then attach that. So if you lose that, you just have a bunch of these bags and you're not losing the 4-ounce lead piece or something like that. Yeah, because you need a heavy one when you're firing stuff into the surface. I might.
Yeah, bottomfish, yeah.
Next,
I think they do that in, Oregon and Washington, the sandbags, but yeah, we do a wrench and just tie a hook on with
Yeah.
with
Because when you're doing the saltwater stuff, even if you're a pretty mellow surfer, you still gotta have a lot of, pull. So you need quite a bit of weight to keep.
yeah, for lean cod, we anywhere between 12 to 16 ounces, depending upon the current, depending on the depth.
What,
But
when
now,
you're fishing off a boat, or you're fishing offshore?
either one, but if it's for lean cod, it's on a boat.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, because there are places on the shore.
Just out of Emeryville with Yokomizo, John.
Yeah, no,
We got a new hook fin, brother.
Dude, I went on the huck fin back in like the late nineties.
That's a good boat.
Yo.
So he puts a
Yeah.
wrench, so he'll grab a wrench, he'll just put a
Yeah.
tool, and then he'll put a hook on the wrench, and then they just drop
Sweet.
it. I've been looking for a way to save money.
Yeah, so, there's some pretty good, saltwater prospects at Morro Bay, just saying. That's why I'm probably gonna end up there instead of going to Hetch Hetchy. Hetch Hetchy's gonna be cold,
We'll be in Laurel Bay.
so I'm gonna do, my game plan, right, is to lead the AEG trip, but that finishes early afternoon. It's probably gonna be like one of my geomorph trips, you know, finishes early afternoon. Then I'll head straight out to Morro Bay, but I'm gonna head to the J first. It's gonna be kind of, I think it's gonna be still pretty low tide around that point, so I think I won't bring out my casting stuff. I'm gonna poke pole instead. Cause I've got about 2 hours, I'll probably have about 2 hours of daylight, poke pole, see what I can get to cook up with, you know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have some try with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you know, the last time I did this was, what was last fall, wasn't it? I did the fall trip and I had some humongous trout drilling up, that orange meat. Good. And I mean, they were big enough so I could share. That's how. Shared a lot.
Well, thank you very much. We'll take a couple of minutes while I get set up and get to the bathroom. You can ask John questions, get some swag, whatever you need to do, and then we'll talk about nitty gritties for the field trip.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Again, speaking of that world-class geology, you folks gonna see some.
As you know.
For the.
It's only like 20, 30 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I don't